My name is Dave, and I have my sights set on becoming a game developer. Despite having all the technical skills required to create a game from my kitchen table, I still can't seem to figure out the part where I make one that people actually want to play. And that fact makes me want to sacrifice a helpless Pikmin to nocturnal predators. Sorry, little Pikmin, that's just the way it goes. But since I'm not a heartless monster, I'm gonna have to think of a more productive way to handle this. In my last project, I created a title screen that shows a zoomed out picture of a world that a game could take place in. As I was working on it, I realized that I was essentially mapping out every single spot I wanted players to visit on their adventure. So I thought to myself, why not zoom in a bit and try a similar strategy when designing each individual area? So here we are. This is the time I created a town for a game that doesn't exist. One of the biggest level design stumbling blocks I've run into is not knowing where to start. I hate leaping into things without a plan. So plopping down a bunch of pathways and buildings at random wasn't gonna fly. But by doing some extensive research and not playing Pikmin 4 while ignoring my responsibilities, I got an idea. My favorite levels in video games are ones that are built around landmarks. Unique structures that look cool and let players know where the party is. They're placed within close proximity of each other and have some liminal space connecting them. I decided to design my town the same way. So the first order of business was to create a detailed map. That way I have a bird's eye view of how it will look when it's done. Plus, if I decide I don't like something, it's a lot easier to change things when they look like this than when they look like this. Alrighty, time to roll up my sleeves and keep my hands relatively clean while still getting the job done. In my last project, I briefly talked about the hollowed out glacier area dome, so we'll start there. I began by creating sprites for all of the houses. The town population consists of a handful of gnomes and a single human. So I made a simple cabin for the human to live in, and some giant tree stump houses for the gnomes. These will serve as those handy-dandy landmarks I mentioned earlier. I picked where I wanted these new luxury homes to be situated, and then connected them with some pathways. After that, I traced a line around the houses to get an idea of where the borders would be, and started adding some decorations like street lamps and trees. Now, I'm no architect, but I'm willing to bet the residents won't like exiting their homes only to fall into the void. So let's start adding some landscapes. Not a whole lot of light filters into the top of the glacier, so I made the snow on the ground a dark blue. I have fond childhood memories of playing in the snow at dusk, and, getting attacked by cartoon skeletons. So I wanted to capture that feeling in this town. After that, I added some extra foliage and pathways, and voila! That actually ended up being the hardest part. With a plan of action in front of me, I never found myself in a position where I didn't know what to do next. I didn't want to be the only one who benefited from it though, so I programmed it into the game for players to use. Looking pretty good if I do say so myself. Of course, now that I've created all these miniature pathways, houses, and trees, I have to actually make them the proper size. Probably should have thought of that before I went overboard on the decor. I'm not going to go over the creation of every single asset, as there's not much to say other than, I drew them. But I do want to go over the part that I had the hardest time pixel farting into existence. Oh, you think I'm joking, don't you? But I'm not. I despaired over this 16 by 16, unshaded, untextured, single-colored block for what felt like an eternity. I really wanted to capture that snow at dusk feeling I mentioned earlier, so getting the color for the actual snow tile just right was really important. I find that the best looking snow is mostly white with a bit of blue added to it. But since it's dark in this cozy little town, making it a darker color was a must. This resulted in a lot of dull bluish grays. Gross. I had to look at a lot of reference pictures to get an idea of how I wanted it to look. In the end though, it wasn't until I actually tiled it into the game and saw it next to the other assets that I made that I finally found the right color. Sometimes you need to see everything together and make the small adjustments you need to make it not look like color vomit. Next, I created tiles for a pathway to break up the monotony of the snow tiles, and a snowbed to act as a wall. The snowbed is great, because I can put stuff on here willy-nilly without having to worry about any of it getting in the player's way. The pathway also ended up serving an unexpected, but useful purpose, which I'll show you later. I'm also very proud of the evergreen trees I made for this project. You may notice that this looks nothing like this. I tried to make the original shape I had in mind work, but I hated every rendition of it. This worked out for the best though. I mean, not to brag, but those evergreens look good enough to eat. Right, now that the tiles are done, it's time to finally put them into place. Using the map as a blueprint, I started with the player character's yard. I took a similar approach to how I created the map. I placed the landmark, the house, first, and then added the rest of the tiles around it. I began to explore this little patch of heaven in test mode. I felt like it was way too big though, so I had to squeeze things in a bit. Okay, that might be a little too small. There we go. With the resizing done, I placed some trees on the surrounding snowbed and some decorative tiles, and voila. A relatively simple area, but players aren't intended to spend too much time here anyway, so it's fine. Besides, the main course is yet to come. Creating the main part of the town was a lot smoother and easier given everything I learned so far. I used the map as a blueprint, placed the landmarks first, connected them with pathways, resized the land as needed, and added an unhealthy amount of trees to the surrounding area. I wanted one of the houses to be in a sort of grove, so I actually created a tall tree tile set while I was creating the other tiles. I found that they, along with the houses, looked a little awkward just sitting on top of the snow without any sort of shadow or indentation. I hardcore stressed over how to alter the sprites to fix this. But then I realized, oh right, I have pathway tiles. A simple and perhaps slightly lazy solution. But it ended up looking great. And it felt good to find a fix that used resources I already had. With my labors nearly complete, I gave into scope creep and created some iron fences to give my snowbed tiles the occasional break. Doing so also gave rise to this little area here. When I gated this unused scrap of land off, it made me remember all those areas and games that I clearly couldn't get to, but tried to anyway. So naturally, I decided to place a sign right here, to make people think they can get over there and drive them insane. Am I a great game developer or what? If you watched my last video, you may remember that I don't have a musical bone in my body. That's okay though. I'll just borrow some music from another game and hope that I don't have to face the consequences of my actions. A huge inspiration and help in creating this town was Snowdin from Undertale. It has a similar vibe to what I was going for with Dome, and the music that plays in Snowdin definitely reflects that vibe. So I'll just ask the game's creator for his permission to use it. Hey there, Mr. Adobe Fox. Can I use Snowdin's theme in my video for example purposes? I'm not hearing a no, folks. Awesome. I'm sure this won't come back to haunt me later. Now it's time to show you around this newly constructed town. Be sure to watch to the very end of the video. I have something else I want to show you guys. I'll put a timestamp here if you want to hurt my feelings and skip the grand tour. some of you might be wondering what the inside of these homes look like. Maybe I'll show you, if you behave yourselves. And since I'm sure you're all saints, I'll go ahead and show you now. So this right here is the mayor's house. If you look closely, you can see... Is that... ice? Why is ice falling from the top of the glacier? That wouldn't happen unless... Uh-oh.